Alrighty, welcome back to the Doom 3 commentary with me, Skully the Metalhead. Part of the game which I think will probably be one of the more drab parts commentary-wise, and I only say this because, well, there's a rather big lack of stuff that's going to go on here. I mean, for the most part, we're mostly going to be seeing the UAC side of the... Jesus, Patruga. We're basically just going to be seeing the UAC side of the thing. I think we maybe have one audio log, plus, you know, bits and pieces here and there that I'll probably point out of interest. But aside from that, mostly just drab facilities. Although, on the one hand, we do get to see our slow, if a little bit more of a morbid and natural progression into the more hellish environments. Which I suppose does bring up an interesting point of commentary, which I suppose I'll bring up now since we've got a long stretch of time before anything of interest happens, but I've honestly been wondering whether or not the core of the Mars planet is hell, because, again, we see the Martian civilization here as we had alluded to in the last part. So, I'm beginning to wonder as we get closer and closer to the core, whether or not Mars, or at the very least the center of the planet, is hell. Although part of me doesn't think that that's really the case, since, you know, hell appears to be some kind of other dimension that we reach via the teleporter. So, I don't know, perhaps the demons had like some kind of stronghold here, or perhaps this is merely one of the places in which they had established, you know, after eliminating the Martian civilization, or at least before the Martian civilization sent them out of this dimension. I don't know, really interesting thing. Whoa. Don't really have much more to say. This is going to be a very boring commentary. Better get out those juicy tangents. Okay. Here we go. I suppose something I'd also talk about again, since I didn't really... Well, I don't think I really did a good job of making my points very clear. I was talking a bit before in the last part about how, you know, a lot of people like to follow the whole Doom guy is reincarnated into many different incarnations throughout the different games, like, you know, Doom 2016, Doom 1 and Doom 2. And again, it's an interesting topic for discussion, and one that though I don't personally follow, I can see why people would, you know, give it the time of day, because, as Doom 3 alluded to, it appears as if Doom guy is repeated throughout time and space, or at the very least through multiple timelines, because, I mean, a lot of people like to follow the belief that, you know, Doom guy from Doom 1, 2, and 64, for some reason, I don't think that's even necessarily canon within the main series, is the same Doom guy from, you know, 1, 2, and 64, and that he eventually becomes, you know, Doomslayer from Doom 2016. I can't really confirm that for the Doom 2016 portion, however, as I have yet to play it, and I haven't really yet to make a connection. And also, the second part of which is that I'm not sure whether or not id Software necessarily counts that as canon, or if they're alluding to it, or if it was really just more of a up to your own interpretation kind of thing, but as far as I'm concerned, while I would like there to be some kind of connection between the Doom games, as far as the story reason is concerned, to me, I think a better way of handling the whole synopsis would just be not to necessarily have Doom guy as, you know, one person, but more so as just a nameless marine who is spread across multiple different people with different lives, different backstories, and nothing really trying to make him that special, because, I mean, even though a lot of people would like a central protagonist akin to that of, like, you know, Master Chief or Samus or Aaron, or pretty much any kind of nameless protagonist, I think the fact that they are nameless and are, well, I guess by extension, a little bit more human to us, makes them seem a little bit more... I don't know, I guess it's, again, I don't want to say relatable, because again, they don't necessarily have any personality traits that weren't already included by our own volition/imagination, but I don't know, just I guess, I'm not really sure why I tend to reject the idea of having, you know, the main character be somebody so special, because when you really think about it, I mean, Doom guy is fighting the forces of hell on his own. I mean, he's just an average guy and an average soldier who's just fighting the forces of hell on his own. I mean, that in and of itself already makes him a pretty badass son of a bitch, but I mean, to force this entire idea of having, you know, timelines and, you know, having him be some kind of reincarnation with a grand spiritual power, I don't know, I think it kind of takes away from the sense of normalcy. Like, I mean, and again, I think this does kind of go back to the appeal of, you know, blank slate characters like, you know, your Link, or, you know, Claude Speed from Grand Theft Auto 3, but I don't know, the massive appeal of characters like this is in the sense is that you can pretty much make those characters' thoughts your thoughts, you know? And, again, I'm not necessarily sure what they do with Doom Guy / Doomslayer and Doom 2016. And again, this isn't really even a case of giving them personality traits, but for me, the big crux is that, you know, I guess by making him a reincarnation and, you know, showing him as a legendary figure throughout history, kind of takes away a little bit of the, you know, normal guy thrust into a situation he doesn't understand, but he fights his way through it anyway, by pure virtue of, you know, his will to survive. I think it kind of takes away from the whole, you know, that appeal. But, you know, I can see why people would like to, you know, follow that line of theories, because, again, it adds a nice connection throughout all the games, and, you know, it tries to, in some respects, make it feel worth your time to play each and every one of them. Even though Doom as a series, despite some of its story-heavy elements like in Doom 3, each game can be played without, you know, any prior knowledge to the other ones. Like, I mean, especially for the classic ones, I mean, with Doom 1 and 2, you can pretty much play both of them with the same sense that Doom is, you know, Hell's invaded Mars, go kill the demons, Hell's invaded Earth, go kill the demons. And even with Doom 3, like, I mean, if you don't want to pay attention to the audio logs or, you know, any of the cursory elements, I mean, you can pretty much just go through this game with, you know, Hell's invading Earth, this evil Dr. Betrugger guy wants to send the demons to Earth, go stop him. Like, I mean, the stories are relatively simple, but I think what makes Doom 3, or at the very least, you know, my vision of Doom 3, a little bit more, you know, deep in that respect, is the sense that you get as much as you put in as, you know, the game puts out. I think I kind of completely fucked up that analogy, but that's just how I view things, or at least in terms of how Doom 3 handled its story. Yeah, where's my other juicy tangent? Gotta find some more juicy tangents. Oh yeah, and then that was another point that I did want to add to the whole Doom Guy reincarnation thing, and one thing that I do think might have been an interesting element had it expanded upon Doom 3's plot, is in the sense that, you know, we've seen, especially in the last part of Hell, where the Soul Cube had apparently chosen Doom Guy as its savior, and, you know, plus the little snippet with, you know, the tablets at the end showing the recreation of the Doom 1 cover, except with Doom Guy holding the Soul Cube instead of, you know, pistols. And I think there could have been something interesting done with that, and again, part of the reason why I think some people do follow the whole Doom Guy reincarnation thing is that, for me, while I don't think Doom Guy is a reincarnation of the one from Doom 1 and 2, I think that the Doom Guy in Doom 3 is perhaps some kind of link between the Doom Guy who was in the Ancient Martian Civilisation, and I suppose in some way was either part of the genetic line, or part of some kind of temporal disturbance that imprinted itself onto him. Okay, I'm probably just pulling this shit out of my ass, but I think, again, if it wasn't a direct genetic line that connected Doom Guy to the Ancient Martian Civilisation, it was at the very least a similar pattern in which, you know, the female from the Ancient Martian Civilisation had decided that, yes, this would be the one who would defeat Hell's mightiest warrior. And again, you know, I think, in that sense, it would kind of make the whole Doom Guy is the ultimate badass thing a little bit more earned, because, again, you know, he isn't badass by virtue of him being reincarnated, or even necessarily even by his genes. It's more so for the fact that he's proven himself worthy just purely by the fact that he's managed to survive for this long, and that he's been willing to go through hell and high water just to end the demonic threat. I mean, even without necessarily paying attention to those details or going as far into it as somebody like me would, that's actually pretty fucking admirable, and I think it kind of makes Doom Guy feel like a much stronger character despite the fact that he's shown little to no emotion by this point. But again, you know, it's as I've been repeating throughout this part, really. You get as much as you put into Doom 3's story as much as you get out of it. Which, as a side note though, and again, this is kind of unrelated to Doom 3, but I figured I might as well mention it anyway, but I think that's kind of why, when you see games with, you know, nameless protagonists and you intend to give them a bit more character, that's why it tends to get rejected a lot. I suppose the one thing I am thinking of is probably Metroid Other M, with, you know, how people reacted to Samus's post-traumatic stress disorder. Not really going to get into that too much in this part, since, again, not related to Doom, but I think it does kind of go to show how, you know, people's vision of a character for so many years can be so ingrained into their minds that when, you know, that when the writers want to deviate from that and go, you know, with their initial spirit and vision of the character, a lot of people tend to get a little bit more angsty / a little bit more aggravated that their version of the character isn't you know, what's being presented on screen. I don't know, it's an interesting dynamic to really think about, just to see what happens when, you know, fans see characters who they consider to be their toys taken away from them and then, you know, have their context and, by extension, their characters changed to fit more with the creator's mold rather than what the fans initially like to make of them. Again, I don't think anything like that's necessarily happened to Doom Guy, although I could be wrong since, you know, Doom 2016 and all that, but considering how well id Software handles their stuff, well, even despite the fact that they've lost a lot of their original members, I'm pretty confident in thinking that Doom Guy will remain relatively pristine. Ouchies! Now, for those of you wondering what we're going to be doing right now, actually no, I don't even need to pad that out because we got an audio log coming up next. Actually no, it's a little bit of a conversation tangent with one of the survivors who's somehow managed to survive this long. How do I know this? Well, it's just because I've been looking at the editor timeline, and that's what tells me when I can take a break and drink Pepsi. But still, I mean, as you have noticed with the lava below, we are getting closer and closer to the planet's core. So, it quite literally is a descent into hell. Although I do wonder how we're able to survive down here. I suppose you could probably just put it to an artificial gravity or something or other, or a bit of an artificial atmosphere, but, I don't know. Either future tech or... Because you'd think that the temperature, you know, for going this far down into the planet probably would have had some pretty adverse effects, you know, to a human body. Okay, now we're getting to some platforming. Yes, platforming in a Doom game. Who would have thought it? And basically what you have to do is just jump onto these little pillar things that occasionally extend. Again, it's nothing too challenging, although I have admittedly fucked this up more than once. Yes, seriously, ooh, you gotta... Yes, if you fuck that up, you take a significant amount of damage, and honestly, even for something as short as that, man, like, that's... Ugh. Again, again, you might not think it, but that is deceptively easy to fuck up. Anyway, we've raised the ladder, so there shall be no danger of falling anymore. And we're about to listen to this guy, so I'll take a drink of the Pepsi, and you can listen to this wacky little conversation tangent.
Who are you? What are you doing here? You're gonna attract attention and then they'll come. Get out of here now. Take that key card. It'll help you get to the surface. I'm not going anywhere until I know all those things are dead. You can't stay here. You're making too much noise. They'll come for us.
Okay, I'll see you later, dick. But anyway, we finally have our keycard and we can now progress on to more storyline stuff. Actually, I don't think, I have commented on this before, because again, the difference between the Doom 3 and the BFG edition, or the Big Friendly Giant edition as I like to call it, is that there's quite a lot of things in this port that, again, it's all relatively the same, but there are a few key differences. I already pointed out the whole flashlight debacle earlier, how in the original Doom 3 you had to switch in and out between the flashlight and your weapons, which added to the horror a little bit more, whereas in this one, you know, you have the limit. But one thing I don't think I commented on is actually the lighting itself, which in the BFG edition, I think has actually been lit up somewhat. But at the same time though, I think the original Doom 3 had a little bit better lighting, and again, I'm not really sure whether or not this is due to the differences in hardware for the PlayStation 3 versus, you know, the original Xbox or PC ports from, or say ports, but the original versions from back in 2004. But I think Doom 3, the original, did have better lighting. Not really too much to add there. Anyway, we've got an audio log coming up, so I'll take a drink of the Pepsi. You can listen to this, and, I don't know, we'll see how we go from there. Have a listen.
Audio report regarding dangerous working conditions in caverns below Delta. This is Bob Cody. Today is October 18th, 2145. My crew's been rewiring the generators as ordered for the last several days. We can't finish the work. We're stopping after today. This job ain't worth dying for. We'll be collecting our gear and tying down what we can. We call them howls because that's how they start. First the howling gets louder, the screaming, then shaking earth. Mars quakes, throws everything around. Makes walking on the catwalks impossible and working with voltage stupid. The noise is if some of the guys spooked, and I don't blame them. Nothing natural about what we've heard. If someone can figure out what's causing the howlers, I'll get the crew to finish the job. Till then, we'll be available for a new assignment tomorrow.
Oh. You know, you can easily attribute the howlers, as he mentioned, to general imps and other kinds of demons, but as for the origins of what's causing the earthquakes, sounds a little bit final boss-ish. Yes, final boss. For those of you who don't know what the final boss is, I'll keep my lips sealed for now. But I gotta say, that's kind of opened my eyes when I actually know what that is. But let's just say this boss will be pretty large. And there is another tension that I do like to get into, that I will get into actually a little bit later, as soon as a certain death scene is coming up, because I make a little bit of a mistake, in the sense that I just fall down and die, so goofily. Anyway, I'm just kind of killing for time, really, just to save my tangents, because death is upon us. And it's really just shooting more imps. I mean, what else can I say? Although, forget it. I'm nearly about to die anyway. And it's right here. And I admittedly do fuck this up quite frequently, actually.
Oh, what a moron! Am I right?
Oh! Anyway, we are back, and I've skipped that little sequence because goddamn, I'd never want to see that portion again. And as I mentioned earlier, I fucked that sequence up a lot more times than I care to admit to. Anyway, as I was mentioning earlier, and there was a tangent that I actually did have about the bosses, which I suppose some could act as, some could probably say that acts to Doom 3's detriment, but there are a pretty significant lack of bosses in the story of this game, which does make me wonder whether or not, id Software probably could have thrown in a couple of new ones, or if not, at least reuse some of the older ones, like, the Spider Mastermind, or even including something like, the Baron of Hell, or just anything like that, really. I mean, I don't know, I guess you could call it padding, and, there are some bosses that were added into things like the Lost Mission and Resurrection of Evil, but in a general sense, there really isn't that many bosses here. Which is kind of saddening to me, because again, I did like, the Vagary boss fight, I did enjoy the Sabbath fight, and I don't know, I'm just kind of... I guess the Mancubus could technically count, but that's an enemy we encounter in the game a bit later on anyway, so... I don't know, I guess if there was anything I could have asked for in Doom 3, I suppose, if not a few more boss fights, then at the very least, a couple of new enemy types that could have made you go, whoa, Doom 3 is such a radical departure from the other two games. I mean, it was already going for the whole horror thing anyway, so I'm just wondering why they couldn't have tried a little bit more. And I suppose going back to the Vagary, and something I probably should have mentioned back then, is that I really did like its psychokinetic abilities, and something that I kind of feel they probably should have done a little bit more. Well, then again, I suppose that probably would have driven up the whole comparisons between the Doom games and Fear to such a significant degree, a lot more than they already have, which, again, I never really understood, because Doom 3, released in 2004, the first Fear, released in 2005. Like, I mean, make the comparisons to Armor Wade all you want, man, but, ooh, Jesus Christ. Whoopsie daisies. Anyway, I mean, make the comparisons to Fear all you want, but Doom 3 came first, man. Like, it was a bloody year in advance, for fuck's sake. I mean, you can't, I don't know. I guess maybe it's just a lot of bitter people who, wanted Doom 3 to be a little bit more action-oriented, but still, take what you can get, really. Bugger, it's too soon. Well, on the plus side, we only have another 5 minutes, or 5 and a bit minutes left to go, so I can probably expunge one of my last tangents, and probably my question to a lot of my to a lot of people who are paying attention to the Doom 3 commentary. And that's something I was really thinking of as I went over a list of reviews that I was planning for this series, that do you think that a new Doom movie could work in this day and age? I mean, in 2005 we did get the, well, let's be honest here, the admittedly horrible Doom movie with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and again, having rewatched that movie in recent months, I've honestly been thinking to myself, would a second attempt at a Doom movie work? Because, I mean, even if it's not, horror related, if it was like an action movie, do you think it'd pay off? Because I think a Doom movie in 2017 could probably be pretty damn good. I think video game movies have gotten better in recent years compared to what they were in the early 2000s, where they were either close enough to the source material, or were nowhere near the source material, like in the case of Resident Evil, or, all those movies of the like. I guess I'm just thinking more in the sense that a lot of people wanted the Doom movie to have more first-person shots, like the main selling point, which I think was like halfway through the movie when Doom Guy gets the injection that gives him the good chromosome. Which I think can be done, because I believe there was a movie released not too long ago, I think it was last year, called Hardcore Henry, that if it was not entirely in first person, it was at least shot for the most part in first person, which makes me think, I think a Doom movie could probably work if it was done in that style, and again, it might be a little bit avant-garde, but I think it would probably do well to have, the viewers see what Doom Guy sees, and again, if you could pull some seamless editing tricks, I think it would honestly make for a fantastic method of storytelling. I don't know, probably just me thinking a little bit outside of the box, but again, that's just the kind of thing that makes me wonder whether or not Doom's story could be told through one particular person rather than just having an established sequence of story sets, which again, even if it was going the other way in and of itself, I wouldn't mind that either, because again, to the Doom movie's credit, I think a majority of its elements probably could have worked. It just needed a little bit better of a script just to go along with it. Well, plus the actual inclusion of hell itself, but that's neither here nor there by this point. I don't know, it's just something that I like to think about, because in terms of video game movies, I think a lot of them can work, but they just need, the proper people who know how to adapt the source material. And in the case of, Doom, I think it can be quite easily done, because even to the 2005 movie's credit, the basic premise and plot are there. It's just that they tried to add too many elements that ultimately distracted it, and it felt oftentimes that they tried to, I guess they tried to catch in on the Resident Evil thing, where they tried to go the whole, bio-experiment route, which, again, admittedly, you could have easily rewritten as just, oh, this is how the humans interpreted the hellish experiments, and they tried to add a bit more science into it, which again would have been reminiscent of Doom 3. But again, I only feel that would have worked had they confirmed by, the midway point of the movie that, yeah, these are creatures of hell and we're all pretty much fucked. Now we have to fight our way out, fuck yeah, humanity, heavy metal, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. We're coming up to the end of this little section, and hopefully next time I'll have a little bit more to talk about, because after this part we'll be seeing the Martian Civilization, we'll be seeing a lot more of their technology, and I suppose I could throw in a few more of my speculations about their culture and a little bit more about their history. I don't know, I don't really have too much more to add to that. Okay, here we are in the thing's end. So as soon as we gather up a little bit more health, ammo, and items or whatever... Already fill up on Samantha ammunition. Yes, Samantha, it's what I named the PFG. Do you have a problem with that, viewer? No? Good. Anyway, I'm Skully, keep it new metal, and next time on the Doom 3 commentary, we will descend into the Caverns 2 Electric Boogaloo. See you later.